Beautiful people, welcome back again to another video. If you are new in this channel, this is Queen Sharon Entertainment and home of freedom fighters. If you haven't joined our family yet, join us by hitting the red button down below on the bell notification icon, so whenever we have a new video in this same channel, you will get notified. Thank you so much for chilling in, and I love you all. So my people, I have a video here that I want you all to watch, and I myself will be watching with you in this particular video. Feel free to let me know what you think about the video after watching on the comment section below. Like and share this video, and I will see you again in my
of law. I'm not one of those lawyers that may go and meet a judge like Nicodemus at night to say, help me. I fight my own in court frontally. This case is bad, bad, bad. Once you don't agree, I say take to another lawyer. I'm not going to have blood money on my hands to take on a case that I know is bad, is dead on arrival. So, because no country can survive without the rule of law. It's just not possible. It is our ability to subsume ourselves to the operation of rule of law that makes us different from animals, that removes us from the Herbacean state of nature, where life was short, nasty, and brutish. By 1885, Professor A.V. Dicey had already to discuss the concept of rule of law, which, in summary, is subjection of all persons before the law and equality before the law. Whether you be a sovereign, president, head of state, or the Franz Fanon's wretched of the earth or the hoi polloi, you must be one and the same before the law. Before the law. Nobles and commoners, slaves and slave masters. Once you begin to distinguish as between categories of people, then there's going to be trouble and anarchy. That was why last year the president missed it when he said national interest, in quote, should be subordinated to rule of law. That was wrong. Because national interest is defined by every government according to its own blood binoculars, which is normally government interest, not national interest. But the rule of law itself predates man. It started from the Garden of Eden. It was the violation of the rule of law in the Garden of Eden that got God angry with Adam and Eve, and he decided to drive them away because he laid down some rules. Thou shalt eat of all this food, but of that singular forbidden fruit thou must not taste. It is the violation of that rule of law in the Garden of Eden that God got angry and he had to drive it them. So making the rule of law central is very important. And the president of IBA was here to look at some of these issues, and many distinguished panels actually looked at many of these issues very critically. And I think it was a way of driving it home to the present government that you cannot operate outside the rule of law. No matter what anti-corruption you say you want to do, no matter how you say you want to go after supposed enemies of state, you must first and foremost go within our constitutional and legal organogram and regime. Anything outside it then becomes anarchical and is unacceptable in any constitutional democracy, Nigeria inclusive.
But was that point driven home? I mean, I take you back to what you just said about how the president made that statement about how the national interest supersedes the rule of law. He said that as justification of certain actions of the executive, but also as a foreshadowing for what was to come, which was the rather scandalous removal of the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Walter Onnoghen, and his replacement by the current CJN, Tanko Mohammed. The Senate Minority Leader raised that point and was quite critical of the NBA and their stance in that matter, or failure to take a stance, and he got rapturous applause as a result of that statement. You buttressed that point. You raised the Pakistani precedents where the lawyers took to the streets because of Musharraf's removal of Chowdhury.
Yes.
But you were contradicted by Femi Falana SAN, who made a statement along the lines of the person's morals, that it's difficult to don a cape. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting. It's difficult to don a cape for somebody whose morals are not quite up to par.
I don't like discussing people, particularly when they are not there. But because we mentioned Femi Falana specifically, let me say he was dead wrong. He said that Mohammed Chaudhry, the then Chief Justice of Pakistan, was not accused of corruption. That is not quite correct. President Pervez Musharraf accused him of misconduct and abuse of office. I do not know what greater elements constitute corruption than abuse of office and misconduct. Femi Falana may have been defining corruption from the narrow perspective of this government that I've seen in the last 1.5 years. They think that corruption simply means the giving and taking of bribery. They do not seem to realize that political corruption, prebendalism, cronyism, favoritism, nepotism, they are all the isms. They are even greater forms of corruption. Now, on the 9th of March, 2007, Pakistani lawyers poured on the streets when the then president, Pervez Musharraf, removed the then Chief Justice of Pakistan, Mohammed Chaudhry, accusing him of gross misconduct and other criminal acts. And the lawyer said, no, you cannot do that without first subjecting him to a proper trial. And they poured onto the streets. For months and months, they literally shut down Pakistan. In fact, they had to force the government and the judiciary to bring back the Chief Justice. Even if you say Onoge was corrupt, which till this moment as I'm talking to you, no court of law has tried Onoge to find him guilty of any crime. Even the Code of Conduct Tribunal, they removed him preemptorily with an ex parte order. Even when the proceedings were still going on and his jurisdiction had been tried, the Court of Appeal, in the case of Justice Onogo versus the CCT and others, actually held that the Code of Conduct Tribunal was wrong to have ordered Onogo to be removed. So even as we speak, Onogo has never been tried nor convicted of any offense. They forced him out. All they wanted was to force him out of office. And that they have successfully done. Otherwise, why would the Court of Appeal wait for nearly 3 months before delivering judgment in such a simple matter that they could have delivered judgment from the following? By the time they delivered judgment, almost 3 months later, it was too late.
But what are our chances?
So my argument is that even if Onoge were accused of corruption, what we are saying is that you must allow him to pass through the due process of law before you can remove him. And the Constitution is clear. Sections 153, 158, 291, 292.3, Pass A and B, Section 21 of the 3rd Schedule, they are all clear that before you can remove a judicial officer, you must subject him to trial by the National Judicial Council. And that was why the Court of Appeal heard in Erelu Habib, the Supreme Court, as a matter of fact, heard in Erelu Habib's case, and the Court of Appeal in Ngajiwa's case, that you cannot begin to try a judicial officer until he has first been disciplined by the NJC, which is independent in accordance with the doctrine of separation of powers, ably propounded by great philosophers like John Locke, John Calvin, Immanuel Kant, and most ably propounded in 1748 by Baron de Montesquieu, that the 3 arms of government must be distinct, different from each other, so that there will be checks and balances.
Yes, well, so you have cited, I have to follow up. You've just cited constitutional procedure. Supreme Court precedents, all of these things should be inviolable. What are our chances as a democracy if people within the legal profession do not seem to grasp these simple concepts, that the ends do not justify the means?
Oh, what we are seeing, it's not that they do not know. They know. It's just that they want to sidetrack the law Nicodemously. It's an assault on the rule of law, which was where we started from. It's an assault on the rule of law. It means we are not ready to subject ourselves to principles of good governance and rule of law. Once you subject yourself to rule of law, then you will see that even if you were going to remove Onoge, you could still allow the judicial process take its place. But what many of these people believe is what you call mob lynching. Oh, you have accused him of corruption. In fact, the government, their spokesperson, like Mohammed, say, oh, name and shame them. But when they have problems, Chief, they again run back to the same judiciary that they had denigrated.
A short break. But just before we take that break, what do we do? Because at the first plenary, at a conference, this issue was a major subject. But we'll come back. Let's take a break first. We're still watching the morning show here on Rgets. And with us in the studio, of course, is Chief Michael Ozokehome, senior advocate of Nigeria. Chief Ozokehome, before we took that commercial break, you had talked about the rule of law, you were talking about the Code of Conduct Tribunal, the Onogen case, and I wanted to ask you, at the first plenary session,
yes,
this year's Nigerian Bar Association conference, this was a big issue, particularly the Code of Conduct Tribunal.
Yes.
And the title was Code of Conduct Tribunal, a clash of judicial and executive powers. And you were on that,
yes,
you were a speaker at that, symposium. Now, what is the way forward? Are there likely remedies to ensure that, in the light of what you said about separation of powers, that you don't have the executive also, assuming judicial powers and using legal, platforms to subvert the rule of law?
Yes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Even in our own homes, if your wife and children don't check your excesses, the tendency will be that you become a dictator, even within your own home. And dictatorship is not necessarily a military dictatorship. It could also come from a so-called democracy. President Saddam Hussein was going for elections, always going for elections. In Iraq, didn't we know that? But he was a dictator, maximum one for that matter, an absolutist. Now, at that first plenary session in which I participated, I described the Code of Conduct Tribunal as a bat, B-A-T. The bat will go to the animal kingdom and tell them, I'm one of you, I'm an animal like you. The animals will say, how? You have feathers, you can fly, how can you be an animal? He will bare his teeth and say, look at my teeth, my canines. They are like your own. And really, when you look at the bat, it has teeth, like dog, like any. He said, look at my ears, my pinna. They are like your own. More importantly, look at my mammary glands, breast. A bat has breast. He said, so I'm one of you. Then they will accommodate the bat. Then after that, he will leave and go and meet the birds. He will say, I'm one of you. The birds will say, that's not correct. You are just coming from animal kingdom where you prove that you are one of them. You say you are joking. I'm one of you. If you say it's a lie, let's fly. Because the bat flies like any other bird. So we have a situation where Section 20 of the Code of Conduct Bureau and Code of Conduct Tribunal Act, which is exactly like the 5th schedule, Part 1, Paragraph 15 of the Constitution, setting up the Code of Conduct Tribunal as a court, more like as a powerful institution that could try public officers, strip them of their assets, as forfeit your access to the government of the federation, even ban legislators, apart from removing them from holding office for 10 years. But do you know what? such an organ that is so powerful, that can do these things, you will never find it in Section 6, Subsection 5 of the Constitution, which lists out what you call courts of superior jurisdiction, starting from the Supreme Court to the customary Court of Appeal. And they are all there, Federal High Court. The the CCT is not there. Even under Section 318, you will not find the Code of Conduct Tribunal listed there as a superior court of record. That is why the chairman and members do not take the judicial oath. So they are automatically an appendage of the executive, the presidency, who can recommend their removal subject to third majority vote of the Senate. In other words, the Code of Conduct Tribunal, which performs serious judicial functions, is not subject to the internal control mechanism of the National Judicial Council, NJC, which controls all other courts in accordance with the sections of the Constitution that I had earlier mentioned. You must look at Section 153, you must look at 158, you must look at 291, you must look at 292, you must look at Parts A and B of to the third schedule, Section 21. And you will find that it is the National Judicial Council that ought to have control over this Code of Conduct Tribunal. Some people have referred to say, oh, after all, the Code of Conduct says their appointment is like that of judicial officers. They were merely saying the law was just merely provided that a member should either be a retired judicial officer or a person that is at par with a judicial officer. That does not make the members judicial officer. That was why in May 2015, the former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Mahmood, wrote to the chairman of the CCT to say, don't refer or allow yourself to be referred to as justice. They are not justices. So you refer to them as honorables. So they are not, therefore, courts of superior record. And in fact, in the latest case of John Noga that we are talking about, the two of them, two cases similar, the Court of Appeal was insistent that, look, including Saraki's case, which incidentally was decided by Justice Onogan, he said, although you have quasi-criminal jurisdiction, you can do all these things, but you remain an inferior tribunal. No matter how we garnish you, how we dress you in borrowed robes, no matter how you engage in narcissism, in chest beating, in grandstanding, you remain an inferior tribunal. You are never a court of superior jurisdiction. What we therefore need is a serious constitutional amendment, because number one, the Code of Conduct Tribunal Bureau and Code of Conduct Tribunal Act having exactly the same constitutional provisions in part 15 of the Constitution. You do not do that. You do not make similar provisions. Part 5, sorry. You do not, 5th schedule. You do not make similar provisions in an act which replicate provisions in a constitution. It is against what we call the doctrine of covering the field. So for you to remove the powers of the tribunal, CCT, for example, you must have to amend that constitutional provision in accordance with Section 9 of the Constitution, which tells us how you can amend the Constitution. Therefore, there is the need very urgently to amend the Constitution to say, look, we have discovered that you have enormous powers. We will now subject you to judicial control so as to prevent anarchy by making you a superior court of record, which for now it is not. So we are having a body that has so much enormous judicial power that it could even make an ex parte order, removing a whole Chief Justice of Nigeria. What order will you make at the end of the trial if an ex parte order will remove the Chief Justice? So it is because of that lack of internal control mechanism that made the CCT to go on rampage. And it has to be trammeled. It has to be controlled.
Okay, Chief, I'd like to move us on to a topical issue at the moment. The front cover of this day today, we are leaving no stone unturned on P&ID's $9.6 billion judgment, says federal government. This is a serious case in front of Nigeria right now that's going to affect everyone, as it's 20% of our external revenues. And the government is taking it seriously, as they should. Now, what are our best options in this situation? And I say that because the government is now considering a renegotiation, but it doesn't seem like P&ID are really going to come to that table. So what would you say are the best options for Nigeria right now?
Let me support you by saying the government must not leave any stone unturned. I will even go further that it must never also leave any stone unstoned. Because we are talking of $9 billion judgment debt. The judgment debt by arbitration was actually $6.6 billion. But in 2016-2017, the government had the opportunity within 28 days to apply to set it aside. They delayed. They did not. By the time they tried to do that, the British court has heard that no, it was too late. Then they went to a federal high court in Nigeria and said set aside, as if that judgment there was subject to Nigerian laws. That is why I say it must never, they must never leave any stone unturned, and they must never leave any stone on stone, because $9 billion is about 20% of our foreign reserve. What is our foreign reserve? About $47.65 billion.
Chief, we'll need to take another short break, yes. And then when we come back, yes, you would recommend possible options to the federal government in this matter. We'll take another short break. We'll be right back. You're still watching the morning show here on Arise News. With us in the studio still is Chief Mike Ozokehome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Chief, before we went on break, we were talking about leaving no stone unturned and leaving no turn unstoned with regard to the $9.6 billion judgment against Nigeria.
$9.6 billion judgment is 3.2 trillion naira. The current budget of Nigeria is about 8.67 trillion naira. And Nigeria's entire foreign reserve is just about $47.6 billion, where China has about $3.2 trillion as its external foreign reserve, with America coming a distant 18 at $125 billion. Now, this contract itself that led to all this emanated from just a gas project that was to be built in Calabar for $40 million. The question, I see it as institutional failure. I've always clamored for building strong institutions, not strong men and strong women. It is our inability to build strong institutions that continue to afflict us, like the leprosy that afflicted Naaman, the leper, before he dipped himself into River Jordan 7 times and became cleansed of his leprosy. So when I heard the Minister of Information beating his chest that Nigeria will not surrender his assets, I was just laughing. These people are not going to say, Nigeria, good morning, sir. We want you to surrender your assets. No. There are ways. We call it writ of fieri facial, writ of execution. You begin to attach Nigerian properties in the 126 countries that belong to the American Convention, in the entire European countries for as long as Britain is a member of the European countries. The only NNPC access, the only access a judgment debt like that is not allowed to touch is if it has to do with the sovereignty of a country. Let's say, for example, the Nigerian house in London, or things where you process your visa and all that. You cannot touch it. But any other assets they see, they can go after that. So what Nigeria need to do, I do not know the lawyers they used before, who they are using. They must quickly go to court. First, quickly file a stay of execution, which is a way of saying, don't carry out this. Then they must quickly file an action to set aside the judgment itself if it is not too late. By saying, for example, there was an inherent fundamental error that affected the jurisdiction of the arbitral tribunal, or that the award itself was excessive. But these are very tall orders. That is why a third option may be, hello, you have won this case. We agree we were negligent. Can we negotiate? We don't have this $9 billion to pay you. Can you take X amount? $100 million? Can you take $10 million? Can you take $1 billion? But to wish it away offhandedly, as the Minister of Information tried to do, is an aberration. The British courts, European courts are not like Nigerian courts, where others are treated with disdain and utmost levity. And the court will make an order, and the government will say we are not obeying that order because we believe that there is a national interest that is higher than a court order. Even after both the government and those people had already argued that matter before the court. That is rule of law. You must obey court orders. If you don't obey court orders, there is anarchy, there is chaos. People will carry machetes and cudgels to fight each other because there will be no court there which at the end of the day protects the common man and common woman. That is why justice is blindfolded. That woman carrying the sword and the scales. The sword to hack down injustice, the scales to balance justice between whether the weakest or the strongest. Blindfolded against blaring sirens of power, against authority, against mightiness. So Nigeria should not take this matter lightly, otherwise our fumbling economy will just crumble. It will not be depression. It will be acute recession, where people will be queuing up again as in 1983-84 to be buying bread and milk and egg as essential commodities, which we called essential that time. Don't think anything is beyond this. Hypocrites. The father of medicine was told us, desperate diseases require desperate remedies. This is a time the federal government should rise up and approach this matter with the desperateness or the desperation it requires.
Let's talk about something else that came up at this year's MBA conference, which was the presentation of the 130-page report covering 6 continents that was presented by the IBA president, which is bullying and harassment in the legal profession. Now, I mean, the IBA is launching this campaign, as I said, across 6 continents. And you have been at the Nigerian bar for a very long time. What has been the experience in Nigeria with regard to bullying and sexual harassment in the legal profession? Do we also have lawyers who are rapists, and who need to be identified and named and shamed? And
I would not even say it's only within the legal profession. Bullying and harassment is actually within the entire society, not just in America or in Europe or in China or in Indonesia, but also in Nigeria.
Sexual harassment.
Sexual harassment can come in different ways. It could be through rape, outright rape, where you have to prove what you call res in rem, that there was penetration. That is why cases of rape are always very difficult to prove. You have to get a witness. I don't know who will witness a person being raped, and to say that there was a res in rem, there was penetration. There has to be medical evidence. But beyond that rape, which is physical, there's sexual harassment in terms of being tormented mentally, psychologically. When banks, these multinational banks, these so-called banks that declare hundreds of billions every year, or billions of naira as profit and as dividends, when you send a young lady who had just finished university to go out there, and you give the young lady a target that we want you to raise 500 million naira for the bank in a year, what are you telling the lady to go and do? How are you going to raise 500 million naira? Many of them come crying to me. I say, in fact, I asked one of them, why don't you go to court? He said, if I go to court, sir, they will even sack me. I said, you can go to court and say, expecting you to raise about 250 million naira in an economy that is prostrate is another way of saying go and commit crime. Go to people to make love to you to be able to give you this money. That is sexual harassment. A lot of it is from the banks. A lot of it is in the ministries. Federal government parastatals. Before you get promotion, which you are entitled to, before you get posted, maybe your husband is somewhere, and you say, hello, my husband is in Abuja. Can you let me still continue to stay with my husband in Abuja? Why are you posting me to Karana Muda? Or to Jibia Magama? Or to Agene Bude? Or to Correct Mene? You say, well, it's quid pro quo. Something for something. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? The language is understood. That is sexual harassment. That is bullying. Such people, such cases should be exposed. Whether it's within the legal profession, the banking profession, within the government, within the security agencies. What of IDPs?
Or in churches?
In churches?
Pastors?
Pastors? What of IDPs? What of IDPs where security people are be shown to go after this unfortunate, helpless and hapless Nigerians who have become most vulnerable just because they want to eat? Then you first have carnal knowledge of them. Such people should be brought to book. They should be tried within the judicial process and sentenced accordingly and jailed. I do not believe in mob lynch. I'm not one of those people who believe that, oh, because you have accused a person of a crime, you must quickly kill him without giving him a fair hearing. Evil God himself gave Adam and Eve a fair hearing in the Garden of Eden. He had already seen them committed the offense, being omnipotent, omniscient. And he still asked him, Adam, why are you eating of this forbidden food? He said, well, the lady, in fact, he had a defense. He pushed it to God. The woman thou created for me, plucked for me, give it to me, and I eat it. That was his defense. Then he asked him, but why did you do that? It was after hearing from them that God said, I find you guilty. Punishment. Then he started outlining the punishment. So one person who believes that the Nigerian criminal justice system is accusatorial. It is Anglo-Saxon based. It means that your innocence is presumed. It has been encapsulated in Section 36 of the Constitution. No one shall be convicted until a crime has been proved against him. It is not the French model, which is inquisitorial, where your guilt is presumed and then you are told to prove your innocence. For as long as we have that in our Constitution Section 36, for so long are we going to allow our democracy to work according to rule of law. Democracy is not a 100 meters dash race of Ben Johnson or Hussein Bolt. It's a marathon race that requires balancing of centripetal and centrifugal forces that are ever at play within an ever dynamic society like Nigeria.
Let me ask you about the CJN's comments during the NBA conference where he said he actually warned lawyers to desist from filing frivolous appeals at the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court and said that they will be punished if they do not desist from this practice. What are your thoughts on that? And also want to take your thoughts on Festus Keyamo when he was screened by the Senate. And he said that it's scandalous that Nigeria has only one Supreme Court and proposed the idea that we should have 6 Supreme Courts whose duties are limited to constitutional or political and electoral matters only. Your thoughts?
Yes, I believe that it is wrong for a lawyer, knowing that certain matters have been settled by judicial precedent, what we call stare decisis. This is how it was. It was like that. It is today, so it shall be. Then a client comes to you. Instead of being frank with the client, when clients come to me and I look at their cases, I tell them straight away, you don't have a good case here. They say, is there no way you can do it? Can't you? I say, well, I'm 38 years at the bar right now, by July 10. I don't know how to do it other than go through the normal process of a court of law. I'm not one of those lawyers that may go and meet a judge like Nicodemus at night to say, help me. I fight my own in court frontally. This case is bad, bad, bad. Once you don't agree, I say, take to another lawyer. I'm not going to have blood money on my hands to take on a case that I know is bad, is dead on arrival. So such lawyers are being sanctioned more and more, especially by the Supreme Court, that now award costs and say, you lawyer, you are the one who must pay this cost. because you ought to have advised your client that this case ought not to come here. So frivolous appeals should be discouraged. And that is why the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has now said there are no interlocutory appeals. If you have one, wait until the final decision before you bring it up, so as not to stultify justice. Justice delayed. Just as justice hurried. It's actually, as a matter of fact, also more dangerous than even justice delayed.
So we're running out of time.
Now, when you talk about this onboarding of Supreme Court, you mentioned the Festus Keyamo. Like I said, I do not mention people in my talk, except when you mention a person specifically. He was wrong, dead wrong. The American Supreme Court is only one. There are every state in the 50 states have their own Supreme Court. Then on constitutional matters and appeals from those Supreme Court, they go to the American Supreme Court. You cannot unbundle Supreme Court of Nigeria, which is one and monolithic, and then you begin to have 6 different Supreme Courts in 6 geopolitical zones. We are going to have an anarchical situation where somebody will run to Supreme Court in Northwest because he believes that one will favor it, and that one will run to the Supreme Court in South-South.
Thank you very much.
So, just a moment, finally, one statement.
Thank you so much for watching that particular video. Feel free to let me know what you think about it on the comment section below. Like and share this video, and I will see you again in my next one. Bye.